So that should have us live now on my Facebook page. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Gilkerson. We're going to be talking about what makes a good composition and the four main design concepts that I look at when I'm working on creating a painting. So the first thing to think about that makes a good composition is that it's visually interesting, so that it holds the viewer's attention and leads the viewer's eye around the entire picture plane. So you want it to act like a visual guide to bringing the viewer around the whole picture plane so that they're seeing the different elements of the composition that you intend to have them focus their attention on. The four things that I look at in particular to do that are focal point, framing, line direction, and point of view. So I'm going to go over each of those with some examples here so that it makes a little bit more sense. So this first one is a painting I did a few years ago called Congaree Spring. And I used leading lines and framing and focal point, actually all of the things that we're talking about tonight, to create the strong focal point. So starting with focal point is the emphasis. It's the area that holds the eye the longest, that has the most visual weight. It can be created through placement and position. That relates to framing. Think about the rule of thirds, which is the idea that spots where the horizontal and vertical third lines intersect create really strong dynamic focal points. So it can be a position, it can be the placement, but it can also simply be from the strong contrast that is there that draws your eye in more than other places. Contrast is one of the strongest things that you can use to create a focal point. So if you look at this painting here, let me get a color here that is going to stand out and be good and hot pink and fuchsia, because that'll make it show up really well here. And think about where you think the focal point is in this one. If you have any doubt at all, the focal point is right here. So what has made that the focal point is that there is stronger contrast right there in that spot in value, hue, intensity, and temperature than there is in a lot of other spots in the composition. The other thing that helps to create a strong focal point there is the line direction that all pushes towards that, but we're going to cover that in just a minute. So that strong contrast between light and dark really helps to draw the viewer's eye in to that particular spot. Second thing that you need to think about when you're creating a composition, second thing I like to think about when I'm creating a composition, is the framing. And by framing, I mean how you are cropping, proportioning, or formatting the picture plane. So not just taking the photograph straight as it comes out of the camera, if you're working from a camera, or painting everything that's in front of your eyes while you're working from real life. So if you look here at some of the photographs that I took on the day that I was working on that one, you'll see how there's some very different directions that I could have gone with that same subject. So this one has the horizon line and the focal point above, well above the middle line of the picture plane. So the focal point, horizon line, and the focal point, because that's what helps create it, are right here. So having it up higher creates a very different feeling than if I'd use the image that has the horizon line and the focal point lower. In this image, more emphasis is placed on the sky than on the land. So that creates a totally different feeling simply through the way I've cropped it. One of the things I like to say a lot is to crop until you drop. So crop until it hurts. Crop until you have eliminated all the extraneous detail. So I wanted to focus on the land. So in looking at this one, I raised that horizon line. I raised the focal point way above the middle of the picture plane, instead of using the one that was lower. That led to a whole different feeling. So this is the photo I went with. And then I still manipulated and moved things around a little bit to enhance that focal point. The other thing you need to think about is proportion and format. Do you want to make it a square? Do you want to make it a rectangle? Do you want to make it a vertical? Or do you want to make it a horizontal? To a great extent, the subject is going to dictate that. So if the subject lends itself to a long horizontal, like a landscape does, that might be the best format to choose. If it's a portrait, a vertical might be the more appropriate format to choose. In either way, you need to explore multiple different options. Don't just stop at the first idea. So explore lots of different options. Test things out. We need to look at it visually and not just make it up in our heads. Then the third thing that I always look at before I get started are the leading lines or the line direction. So let's go back to the painting here for a minute and look at the leading lines here. So leading lines are the real and implied lines that are created by shapes. So they can be real lines like plowed lines, like the line at the top of a tree line. It could be power lines, power poles, roofs, pillars, things like walls. Those can be real physical lines, but they can also be implied lines. Implied lines are things that your eyes connect together. Like, for example, the tops of these trees right here that don't necessarily physically connect in the painting, but your eye connects them because our eye looks for similarities. And when it connects those together, it creates a line. It's not as strong a line as these physical ones that you see here in the plow rows, but it's still a line that's going to contribute to the composition. So linear perspective is really, really powerful. Diagonal lines are really, really powerful. You can see that there's some linear perspective diagonal lines that play a strong role in this painting. You can see them right here as they swoop back all the way from the foreground to that middle ground spot that is the focal point. And they go all the way over. And these over here act as kind of secondary lines that point you then back over here. Then there is that, of course, strong line of the ground line right there. Then there are those slightly less important lines that are created by semi-definite shapes and those implied lines. Like here is the edge of that tree line, and then the top of this tree line. All of these help to point the viewer's eye towards the focal point right here. So those leading lines play a really enormous role there. Now, while those diagonal lines are really strong in there, that's not the most strong diagonal line you could have. The most strong diagonal line, let me see if I can find, there we go, is 1-point linear perspective. So this is a nocturne that I did. And you can see here that we have a road. It's like we're standing in the middle of the road. And the edge of the road here, and the edge of the ditch, and the horizon line all point you towards the focal point, which is right here at the end of the road. Even the more subtle line that is over here on the left where the land meets the wood, that becomes like a visual vacuum cleaner. So linear perspective, 1-point perspective, will act like a visual vacuum cleaner. It'll swoop in, grab the viewer's eyeball, and suck it down very, very quickly to where the focal point is. Now, what makes it work is when there's a lot of other stuff there to hold the viewer's attention and engage them. So in this case, I've used linear perspective to draw the viewer in very, very quickly, and then they slow down and pay attention to some of the more subtle textures and contrasts that are here in this area. So we have these implied lines here that help to slowly meander the viewer's eye back over to that focal point. So it leads the viewer's eye in and out in a little bit slower pace. There are even these semi-implied horizontal and vertical lines back here. So those subtleties there help to hold the viewer in that spot. You have to be really careful with linear perspective, especially 1-point perspective, that you don't pull the viewer's eye in so fast that they come in and immediately leave again. So you need to hold them there. Give them enough stuff that they stay and take a long look around. So that one is a great example of 1-point linear perspective. So this one has a 2-point linear perspective because the focal point is over. These diagonal lines all converge somewhere over here. And you'll notice that there are some secondary diagonal lines. The shadows over here are created by a line of trees that you can't see. And I just did a really sloppy line there. But these lines create a secondary set of perspective lines that help push the viewer's eye around to the rest of the composition, because you don't want them to just stop here at the focal point and not go anywhere else. You want to move the viewer's eye around the entire picture plane. Leading lines can help you do that. So if you've got good, strong leading lines, good, strong line direction, you're going to move the viewer's eye around that whole picture plane, and they'll stay within the picture plane and be delighted. That's the main goal. So the fourth thing that I use is point of view. And point of view has to do with where you position the viewer in relationship to the focal point and the subject. So the viewer kind of takes your position when you're looking at it. So you're controlling how the viewer perceives the subject. There are 3 main viewpoints that artists use and photographers. And there's some other variations on it as well, but those 3 are bird's eye, worm's eye, and eye level. Bird's eye is exactly what it sounds like. Bird's eye is when you're up above the focal point and the subject looking down, as if you're a bird in the sky. Worm's eye is when you are below the horizon line, below the subject, as if you're looking up. Eye level means you're staring straight at it, and your eye is on the same level as the focal point. Those 3 focal points of view give really different feelings to a painting or to any artwork. So when you have a subject and you put the viewer way above it, it means that they don't feel like they're in it as much. Whereas if they're at worm's eye or even approaching a lower level, they feel like they're part of the picture plane. So let's look at those 2 photographs that I worked from in that composition for just a minute, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. So here was that first one, the one I ended up going with, and here's the second one. Same subject, And what's different is the way that I raised the camera lens so that it is pointing a little bit more up or a little bit more down. So this one is at eye level, right at eye level. So you are on equal footing and standing with the landscape. So it doesn't make you feel like you're really high up or really far down. The other one has a little bit more dramatic viewpoint. So here, I put the viewer below the horizon line, a little bit below the focal point, and that creates an entirely different feeling because now you are down in the land. You feel like you could look down at your feet and they'd be in the dirt. That makes an entirely different experience from looking straight at it at eye level. So think about using bird's eye, worm's eye, or eye level to also help create a feeling. So those 4 starting points, those 4 composition or design concepts that I use as starting points are focal point, framing, line direction, and point of view. So think about how you can use those in your paintings as well. And I've got a little trick question here for you. Let me go to this one. Anybody know where the focal point is on this one? Anyone want to make a wild guess where the focal point is on this particular painting? So take a look at it and type your answer into the comments if you've got an idea of where the focal point is in the painting. Think about the 4 factors that we've just talked about: focal point, framing, line direction, point of view. Think about how they're used in this painting to create a feeling. What do you see here? Where do you think the focal point is? So I know at least one person's gotten it because I'm seeing a comment over in the group. So here is the focal point, right here. It's not the cloud behind the trees. It's right here. Yep, 1/3 up from the right. Right on it, Sharon. Brownie points. And this is not a mountain. This is flat land right here. So this is a big old flat field. And what you're seeing are different bands of trees and the field in front. And it is early morning, and so there's a lot of mist and a little bit of fog hanging down. That's what the blue is on the ground. So again, that focal point was right here. And think about what does that. It's the strong contrast there. It's the line direction. It's also the framing, and even a little bit the point of view. So I've used all of those other things that we've talked about to focus in the viewer's attention on that focal point. And let's think about how that's happened here. So right here, you have the strongest contrast in value. A really, really strong contrast in value. This is almost white right here. And it's against a really dark, almost, it's not black, it's a gray, a muted lavender gray. So there's strong value contrast there. Also between that almost white and the green below. So there's contrast in value, hue, intensity, and temperature right there. It also falls almost right smack on the intersection of the 1/3 line for the horizontal and the 1/3 line for the vertical. So let's see, right here, I'm eyeballing this, right about there. So you see how it's falling almost right on that intersection point, that position point. So it's contrast and it's the position and the placement. And then when you look at the line direction here, that just reinforces and backs up those first two things. So we have a strong line right here. That is where the field meets the trees. So that helps to pull your eye along this line. Then you have some really strong implied lines here that lead your eye along to that same spot. You've also got that line here in the back and another implied line over here in the trees, and even a little one right here that helps to create that triangular shape. The clouds themselves form an implied line that all swoop in to each other, leading to that spot again. So there's a lot of line that is also pulling your eye towards that same focal point, that exact focal point. Now I want you to think about the point of view. Where are you in the picture plane in relationship to the focal point? You're almost at eye level right here. So you are standing on the edge of the road looking out at the field beyond you. So the field looks vaster and bigger than if I'd positioned you where the horizon line was up and you were standing actually in it. It's like you're standing on the edge of it. So you can see it spreading out before you. And it emphasizes the sky in this particular composition. So it makes us feel little and the sky big. The fields are vast. The human being looking at stuff is very, very small. So focal point, framing, line direction, and point of view. Think about how you can use those to create strong compositions. Hope that's been helpful, and I hope to see you again soon over in Artwork Living. If you're not in Artwork Living now, hop over there and ask to join, and we'll get you in right away. It is a group for artists of all sorts, not just painters, who want a supportive, friendly community where you can get feedback and ideas from other artists who are dealing with some of the same stuff that all of us do. I also had a question that came in via email from somebody else in the group asking about upcoming workshops. So I wanted to make sure to let you know that you can find the schedule for my upcoming workshops over on my website at marygilkerson.com/workshops. The very next one is coming up in May, mid-May, up in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're going to be exploring the language of color and light. So would love to see some of y'all there at one of the live workshops, but be sure to hop over there and take a look at those. That one in particular is filling up really quickly, so don't prolong or wait too long to get your info in if you're thinking about joining us in Raleigh. Thank you all for joining me here today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye for now, and happy painting, everybody.